So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining today. I think several minutes we'll have more people. But today we have a very special session because we have 3 speakers on one topic, and this will give us opportunity to look at their subject from the different angles. And I think it's like pretty cool. So people still joining, but we'll start our presentation and we'll look through their agenda. So today we'll discuss 3 main bullet points. First is data-driven decision, dream or reality. So we will talk about examples and what we need to do to make our data-driven approach working. Let's just give me a second to be my screen. Now it should be better. Everything is good. Yeah, Sofiia. Okay, so our first bullet point will be data-driven decision, dream or reality. So we will talk about examples and what we need to do to make our data-driven decision. The second bullet point will be from what to start and how to implement data in the real use case. But one of our clients came to us and we will be doing it almost from scratch, step by step, holding our hands together. And the third bullet point will be product analytics in real life. It will be the real case of the product going on the market from 0 to MVP, and after that to the public release of the market. So who we are and why we are talking with you today. So me, Yurii, and Sofiia are SoftServe employees. We are working with the different domains. So we are not concentrating like only on their e-commerce or healthcare. We have no particular domain. So I would say our experience is cross-domain specialist. So, but in any case, we also always see the common patterns from one client to another. So our experience is diverse, and we will try to guide you through our findings and our expertise and experience today. But before we'll start to talk, and before I will go with my intro about myself and my experience, let's see who we have today. So please choose one of the numbers in our pool and put it the right version who you are. And this helps us to understand on what exactly we are focusing and what should perhaps it will make our webinar more interesting. So the basic we have product managers, juniors or not. Okay, so a lot of people still answering. Let's give 1 more minute. So, okay. The majority are product managers. We have some senior managers. Okay, we have not so much engineers. We have project managers. Cool. So thank you for your activity. And so my name is Kristina. I'm product manager cluster lead with the direction of customer-facing digital products. So Yurii and Sofiia are working also with me in one team. We also have several more brilliant product managers working with us. So together we are solving the client's issues on the different stages from idea to implementation. And one of the first stages, or not first stages, one of the main important stages which we are crossing is the topic of their product analytics. So let's begin and let's start to resolve and release our fears and to understand and find the answer of the question is really data-driven decision on the market. So I picked an example, hide the name of the platform and why I'll be describing the case. Please be free to write in a chat the name of the platform or tool which I'm describing. So this platform has success in curating personalized content for the users based on data-driven algorithm. So they are analyzing user interactions such as likes, comments, and time spent on different posts. So this platform optimizes its algorithm to show content tailored to individual preferences. So let me check. We have not so much answers in the chat, but yeah, we have the right answers for sure. Yes, this is Instagram. And if I would have a time machine and go into the time where the old dinosaurs like me were seeing the launch of Insta, but better to say initial name of the platform was Bourbon, so like alcohol drink popular in America. So, and at the same time, another popular application was working with the same logic as initial Bourbon was. It was Foursquare. So the idea was to check in places, to see people nearby these places. And if you want to, you could add the photo to the location. But this feature, they came a little bit later. And you could receive a badge, like part of the gamification achievement, like a mayor of this place or queen, something like this. And meanwhile, Mike Krieg and Kevin Systrom, they are founders of Instagram, but previous name Bourbon, noticed that their platform not so popular, and they decided to look at the data. And what they have noticed, they see that they have too many features and their app is very overcomplicated. The majority of features, the user even don't know where they exist. So what they see and what they heard from the users, that check-ins in itself seems to be fun, but more interesting what people are doing exactly at their places. So this feature which came in Foursquare was adding these photos of the places where I had check-in. So Bourbon added that feature. They give the opportunity to add in photo, but it still was not so hugely popular. And everything came to one dinner when Kevin talked with his wife and heard that she won't be adding photo because it's lame and she didn't know how to use these professional filters. And the quality of camera at that time were not so hugely highly resolution like we have right now. So the idea came at that moment, the Insta Telegram, adding professional photos in 3 clicks. They killed the rest of the features, and it was the beginning of the Instagram. So their data show interest. People started to add photos, but what next pattern they had noticed? A user who receives more likes publishes more content. So social appraised equal motivation. And then the next feature, like adding friends, boom, appeared. And the average number of likes start to grow. And then the next feature appear, feed from friends. And then one more, boom, because the number of users increase, the number of feeds increase, the number of average state increase. And after that appears easy likes, when you need just to tap on the photo and the likes will appear. And after that, they added reference, and so on, and so on, and so on. So they didn't stop. They developed, they were developing, they are changing still, doing all along this all the way. And the main idea right now is to keep you focused on the feed, choosing for you the best content. So in this case, data-driven miracle? Perhaps. But we could say that this data-driven systematic approach, which was built around good product value. And this is our task, our first task as a product managers, to build the value around which you could build your metrics. Let's go for the next slide. It will be shorter, so we don't have so much time to speak about the history of their billionaires platforms, which were developing at that times. But again, try to guess the next platform. So this platform also uses analysis. They are analyzing watch history, search queries, and user demographics. Then it suggests you videos that aligned with individual tastes. And by analyzing this viewer behavior and ad performance metrics, this platform refines its advertising targeting algorithm. So any ideas what video platform it could be? Yeah, we have the answer, and the answer is YouTube. Oh, sorry, not the slide. So yeah, the YouTube started also so they started as a video streaming platform. This was 3 friends, previous workers of the PayPal. And in 2005, the first video, which duration was 18 seconds, appeared. It was me at the zoo. So it started with allowing users to publish, view, comment, like, and share videos. And one of the main rules which they were avoiding, because they have their previous background at the PayPal project and knowing how the user behave and what was the biggest barrier, they were avoiding registration. So you can watch video without registration. And boom, they started to spread. And they noticed there more video, more content. So they need to engage content creators. And in 2 years, they started to pay money for individuals who had created viral videos. And boom, they became popular. So long story short, as a product manager, we need to look at data, yes, for sure. But we should notice not only concrete numbers like daily users, monthly users, retention. No, we need to see the users themselves, and what they do and what the pattern is. And after that, to develop and prove value for our users. And around this value, your key product metric would be. And for each product, it could be different. Yeah. So for some, it could be time spent on the app. For another, it could be amounts of likes. For someone, it could be numbers of pages in the achievements or number of transactions. So the main idea is to build around the value and to understand how the product should work with analytics. And I want to show you an example where we have the analogy between their doctor and the patient and product manager. So imagine we have doctor, patient, and a lot of monitors beeping, showing something. So this is what we need to do. We have product, let's call it diagnosis. So analogy like a doctor understanding a patient medical history, a product manager diagnoses the needs and preference of the product audience. So here we're creating our foundation for efficient treatment, because the treatment for the 6-year-old girl and 55-year-old lady with extra weight, they would be different. That's why you need to start with the user background and understand who they are. The next one, analogy, I also like it because it's like similar to a doctor analyzing symptoms to understand the progression of the illnesses. A product manager studies users' patterns through their journey. So we are looking for their common pattern. For example, when we have heart is aching after the physical training, yes. So, or when we add in registration without any value of the product, our conversion will drop. So this is the patterns which you also need to investigate and look forward. The next analogy is just as doctor monitors basic vital signals, signs, a product manager examines fundamental metrics. Yeah, so daily active users, monthly active users. So just to be sure that the health of the product is still okay. So we are tracking essential indicators for our performance and user engagement. So the same analogy, the heartbeat is like our daily users, but why their patients, for example, blood pressure is dropping. It's like to understand why the users abandoned our cart or not registered on the sign-in form. And the next one, but not the final one. So like a doctor searching for their root cause, a product manager delves in the data to uncover these underlying factors which affecting the product success or challenges, enabling strategy and decision-making. So what product managers doing? We are searching for issues. We are looking for their new opportunities, or like doctors, we are preventing of some drops or failures. So we are investigating factors. We are taking into the consideration our history, background, patterns, and for sure, basic metrics. So when BI team, data engineers, data analysis, they help product managers, we receive from them data. Perhaps some of them could help us and find some unusual peaks or falls, but we need to understand the root cause of it and how we need to heal this in case we have some negative, or for example, in case of positive scenarios like for Instagram and YouTube, how we could monetize that stuff. So for sure, what does need to have product manager to have this ability to take a right decision? I have picked for you like main 8 bullet points that we need to cover. So for sure, we need to have comprehensive data collection. So a product manager should ensure the collection of the collection of data is comprehensive and relevant to the product performance, so user behavior and market trends. So you don't need to put event on each click. You need to understand what data to collect, why we need this, and how it will help me. The second bullet point is data quality assurance. So ensuring that the accuracy and reliability of the collected data is really crucial. And you need to be sure what you're collecting. You could check it yourself in case you have skills. You can use a data specialist, using extra help from the engineers, but you need to be sure that the right click of needed button is in a proper place. Then data analysis skills. So product manager should not have PhD in math, but you need to have a common sense, and you need to have the ability to interpret and derive meaningful insights from the collection data. This involves statistical analytics, analysis, I think, and data visualization techniques. So these are two main essential which you for sure need to have. The next one is alignment with the business objective. So data-driven decisions should be aligned with their overall business goals, and product managers need to have this clear understanding of how to choose metrics and insights and how they will help to contribute and achieve the strategy. So you need to understand, you need to correlate between value and how you could impact on this product value and what benefit their business could receive from it. As next one is continuous monitoring in adoption. So I think it's quite obvious that the product manager must establish a system for this continuous monitoring of the metrics, regularly tracking the performance, seeing do we have some change in the user behavior, market dynamic, or any other factor which affected our products. And the last two, but not the least, is experimenting and testing. So for sure, we need to encourage our companies to grow this culture of experimental, of A/B testing, which should be to validate this huge amounts of hypotheses, to help to make their proper informed decision based on these results. And for sure, it perfectly works with the user interviews, surveys, studies, pool. So you need to combine all this, and this will help you understand your audience and to create cool valued products. So, and to go to the practical part, so first 4 bullet points about data will continue by Sofiia. Sofiia, the stage is yours. She will talk about a cool experience and to understand how to work with data properly and how to implement it.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. Once again, nice to see people joining and being active on the chat. As Kristina said, maybe a few words, first of all, about myself. I have approximately 6 years of product experience. I worked with different domains like HR management, software manufacturing, building data products, and last couple of years were actually heavy related to the data. And today I will talk about how implementation looks like, what it takes, and what's important. So SoftServe provides product management as a service, and in this particular case, our client lacked knowledge and couldn't handle the complexity of the needed request. Chris, if you can move to the next slide, please. So I'll build the story from day 0 when we got a new request to the actual implementation. And here's the short summary of what we know so far on the day 0. We know that product is on a finalization stage in preparation for launch. Client operates in 3 markets, which are APAC, North America, and EU, and APAC as a priority for them. It's an e-commerce website or e-commerce client for personal care products. They have web, mobile, and kiosk apps. And client has some experience with Universal Analytics on one of their old websites, but going forward, they are looking into GA4 and need some support into taking care of this complexity. So moving on, we would usually start week 1 with some workshops which help us understand the client context, particularly business context, like markets, countries, goals and objectives, marketing strategy, customer segments, and etc. Everything that might come handy later on. And as well as product ecosystem, what kind of tools or additional tools and platforms to use to support their web, mobile, kiosk, whatever apps they have. Also, we had some, if you can click next, please. Also, we did workshops on understanding better platforms and user types. And the most, I think, the heaviest one of those were customer journeys. They didn't have any customer journeys documented. So we had to work from kind of scratch with their product department. And this is something that we heavily relied on when designing the solution and before the implementation. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Next would be the week 2, where typically with solutioning would happen. All of that information from the workshops would help us understand, first of all, and confirm tools that we will use, and all of the implied actions that have to be taken there, and as well as define something called analytics architecture. I don't know if it's a real term, but it kind of describes really well what we are doing here. And we would just map out how the containers would look like in the tag manager, because we went with the tag manager here, how the Google Analytics account will look like, access to the information, which platform will be covered by which tool. In our case, we had web, mobile, and kiosk. And lastly, work on mapping out events on a very high level, and metadata for the events, because it's an e-commerce website. It might sound obvious or easy at first, but there are different attributes that are specific to different organizations. So in this case, for item, for user, what actual parameters we are interested in, we can collect. So we would just validate it and work in groups to better refine it. Moving on. Yeah, can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so moving on, as I said, we heavily relied on the customer journey map. We created, I think, 4 of those for different segments. And what it showed us different phases that customer has, different touch points that they have in those phases, and how, which steps do they take later on, and how we measure that step was successfully completed and break it down into the further details. And also it's a very extensive tool. Yeah, you can move on. It's a very extensive tool, but it just helped us focus on what's important for them based on their goals, short-term and objectives. So here you can see how subscription touchpoint was broken down further into the steps, and each step was covered by an event placeholder that will be measuring that. We've also defined trigger for each event. Is it button click? Is it page scroll? Whatever it might be. And as well as some important metadata associated with it. What it also helps us answer is which type of event should we pick here? Is it automatically tracked by Google Analytics? Is the event tracked by enhanced measure? Can we use recommended events for e-commerce, for example, or do we need to cover it customly? So blue one is, for example, it's a recommended event, and the gray ones were all of the custom ones. So it kind of visually helps you understand the scope as well. Moving on to the beginning or early stage of the implementation, I think it's important to point out the need in documentation. And I think the only important piece of document that you can create for the project like this is data taxonomy or events map. There are a bunch of different examples online. If you wish, you can find whatever works for you. And it's also not strictly formatted document, so you can create however it fits for your organization, but it mostly captures what was deployed or to be deployed for your solution in terms of analytics, meaning event names, business questions or context that it could cover, descriptions, triggers, attributes, example of the data, and other things. And why it's important is because it builds the common baseline for everyone, to know what is exactly measured and how it's measured. Over time, we forget stuff, new people come in, someone has to be onboarded or boarded. And instead of doing the reverse engineering that someone might have to do in order to understand what exactly that means and avoid misinterpretation of the information, it just provides already a place where you can find the right answer. And the most important, I think, it's a living document. It has to be maintained as your solution grows. It's not something that you create and just put on the shelf. So housekeeping there is obviously required. Can you please move to the next slide, please? When talking about events, here are just some bullet points from me, what to keep in mind, I think, at least. First of all, take into account the constraints of your tool. I think Google Analytics imposes around 500 unique events, or limit of 500 unique events, but it might be different for other tools and different pricing thus. Also ensure uniformity in naming conventions. If you decide to go with a snake case or underscore, if you build your event name from action to object to page, or object to action, whatever works for you, but just make sure it's consistent. Steer clear from generic names like buttons and clicks. Once you are done with the implementation, I think you will just forget what kind of button that was. I'm not talking even about handing it over to someone else. And consider future-proofing the solution and assuring the scalability. So if you know that something else might be applicable in other areas or other markets, if you can pre-plan that so it's reusable, I think it would be very beneficial. One example here will work from right to left. So legal documents, no, previous slide. Yeah, legal documents button is not a really great name, right? It's not consistent. It's everything at once. Documents button might be better, but still not great. And documents provided, it shows object and action that was done, which is very clear, which you can basically apply. Moving to the next slide, Chris. When it comes to actual implementation, I think there are two areas where the main action will happen. One that will fall into developer side, and another one will fall into product manager side. So you will have to rely on your developers to push needed data and objects to the data layer. And then after that, product manager will be the one who will be setting up all of the triggers, variables, and tags that, and as well setting up actual Google Analytics and Tag Manager accounts. Next, here's the example of how typical Jira ticket looks for the dev team. We can see here that there is a user story, but the most important thing there is, I think it's criteria for triggering. It has to be very explicit, and as well as some event details like name, attributes, etc. was what you need. So data layer is a JavaScript object that is used to pass information between your website and Tag Manager. And only once that's done, you are able to configure tags moving forward. And I think last stage of this journey that I wanted to point it out is debugging and report setup. Analytics implementation, and it's not something you could trust with just by doing the job. You have to investigate and debug it properly to make sure that it works as expected. Google Suite at least provides 3 options that I relied on when implementing it. It would be Tag Manager's preview mode, which is very extensive and helpful. Google Analytics debug, and also real-time reports might be useful sometimes as well. We have heavily relied on explorations. These are custom reports that had to be configured for our clients because they just provide enough flexibility and allowed us to set up whatever is needed to analyze the funnels needed by clients. Moving on. my last slide for today would be, you might ask, where is business success in all of this? Because we just talked about some user stories, customer journeys, and all of that. And I'll build on top with what Panda defined very well. Collection of the right data is the building block for overall data-driven decision-making in an organization, and making a data-driven organization, because it then leads into metrics that will be monitored and analyzed. It will lead into actions and reports that might not be done only by product department, but other departments as well. And as I said, it just creates an organization that takes decisions based on data, not on the gut feeling, taking into account the real world. That's it for me. Thank you so much. Yurii, over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Yurii. I have 8 years of product experience, 5 out of which at SoftServe, and a year and a half on a project/product that I will be talking about. So this will be a short use case. Hopefully it will be interesting and yeah, mildly entertaining for you. And I will start with the description of the company and the product, because that's important for the context. So the company is a hardware manufacturer, typically of the keyboards and mice, other peripherals as well, but keyboard and mice are their like a bread and butter. And they have a software. So this is the software that you typically install after you buy your hardware, and to do some fine-tuning, first-time setup configuration, like a pointer speed, lightings, reassign some buttons, and so on. And the big aspiration is that to turn this one-time app into a productivity software, something that will enhance your desktop experience. So it's now packed with the different kinds of features. And one of the features I was working on, and it was treated and managed as a product. So let's call it macros, because like essentially it's what it is if you know Excel macros or gaming macros. Next slide, please. You have a trigger, not before slide. Which one? Yes, this one, thanks. So you have a trigger. So trigger would be like a pressing a key, clicking on the mouse button, and then there's like you have a series of actions that are executed one by one, right? And it could be for different purposes. It could be in the morning, you click a button, and then we open apps that you use daily. For example, Excel and spreadsheets and Word and a browser. Or it could be a series of the actions that you perform as a designer every day when you are editing the photos. So for example, some mass editing of the hue or temperature or anything like that. Or it could be preparation for a meeting. So you click a button and then do not disturb mode is turned on and the microphone is off and the camera is on. So this was the idea, and we had under the year to develop all these things. And the hard part about this product is that there are like no one-to-one benchmarks to measure against. For example, there are like a Zapier, IFTTT automation tools, but they're like a bit different breed. You could gather the focus groups, right? You can like pack hundreds of people in one room and give this tool to them, and they can comment on the user experience of setting up this macros. This is fine, but you would never know whether they would use it in a real life, because if it clicks with them, it should become part of their behavior, and they don't think about it, right? They just do their like daily routines, and they remember that they have some optimization for that. They click a button and then magic happens. And this is not something that you can like synthetically test. That's why I had very high expectations from the analytics that we implemented. All the steps that Sofiia showed before, I had an amazing analytics team that I worked with. So I essentially give them the number of the questions that I wanted to address on the next screen. They built up the dashboards and the dashboards in Tableau that were always available. And also they could answer some ad hoc questions if I had any. Okay, so the number of questions that they had for them, I would put them into 4 tiers. So the first tier is about the funnel, right? So I have the software, which is a platform, and I want to know how many of those that have this platform installed have discovered my feature, and out of them, how many tried to create a macro, and out of those who created, how many have used it at least once. So this is like at the high level, top of the funnel. Then the second tier of questions are about the users of this feature as a group, right? So how many do we have daily, monthly? Do we retain them? Are there any usage patterns? Where are those users? Who are those users, etc.? The third part is we look on them on a like individual level, right? So how do they use this product, right? How many macros do they create? How often do they use it? And the final one is the the biggest question is, what do they use it for, right? Where is the value in all this? Because of course we had some assumptions and a hypothesis in the beginning, but then there's like this crash test with the reality, which allows you to show, okay, what really happens. And that's what we did. So on the next slide, it was about the process, right? So we established the baseline, and then I was looking on all of this data on the dashboards, and I was figuring out, okay, does it look fine? Does it look not fine? Typically a common sense approach. Try to detect what feels off and can be improved. Then we created a hypothesis, validated it, and as a result, changed the product. So about the funnel, analytics was extremely helpful because I just have all these digits and percentages. We found that the biggest churn is like on the very top of the funnel when only 1 out of 4 users clicked on the feature button, right? So they just didn't do it. And then we had a hypothesis, why so? And the hypothesis was that as they currently use it as a one-time setup, they just do not have the incentive to open the UI. So they just don't get to see the feature, right? And then we validated this hypothesis and we changed the product. So we added a system notification that popped up. We added an annoyingly blinking button that would bring users' attention to this button so they just get to test it out. Because later down the funnel, things were normal. Most of the people tried it, and most of that tried it actually activated it, and we retained a lot of the users. So about the feature usage, interesting part of this, again, everything looked nominal as a baseline. What were really useful is that we proved that our hypothesis about the user base was correct. How did we do it? So this company, they break down their user base in a couple of categories, and one of these categories is advanced users. So advanced user creatives, those are typically designers and engineers, coders, business analysts, etc. So we know what devices do these people in the user base use, as essentially analytics showed that yes, most of the macro that we have created, they have assigned them to the devices of this category. So this was a cool, a proof of the idea that yes, the people that we thought we would serve, we are actually serving. Now the next one, it uncovered one of the problems that we have. Sorry, next one, number 3. Yes, the trouble was that, and unexpected part that I saw on the dashboard was that 1 out of 4 macros that users create is in draft state, meaning inactive. And it could be inactive only in 2 cases. There are no triggers or there are no actions, meaning that it's incomplete. So the hypothesis was that mice users just don't have a button to assign it to. And if they do, typically it's for something extremely important, like back, decrease volume, and they don't want to sacrifice the button for some other improvements. So with this hypothesis, there was no enough data on the dashboards to prove that. So I used other tools. And for me, this other tool was the user feedback tool called User Voice, where people essentially expressed their concerns. And this is what they said. They said, cool feature, but I have none place to assign it to. And there were other people asking, hey, could you please introduce a shortcuts so that I do not need only one button, which is their limited number of, but I can press a shortcut. So this way we validated this hypothesis, and we put in the backlog the change of the product, which is upcoming as of now. The next part, is about the context. So what do they use these macros for? This was extremely interesting for me. So I know, for example, that there's one engineer, and this engineer uses it for like changing the circuits colors of some wires. And there's like a very multi-step routine that of like a 10 or so steps, which he uses multiple times a day. And it saves him a lot of time. But I know this only because I talked to him personally during the interview. But when I look on the data, this data is just gibberish. It doesn't make sense because it's like an arrow up, Command Shift M, 300, enter, Command Shift, arrow up, arrow down. And this was the limitation of the analytics, right? So I had the data about every single macro that was created like since the beginning of the feature. But looking at this without context, it doesn't bring you any information. It's just the number. Of course, you can try to detect some patterns, but it was like extremely difficult thing to do. That's why I relied on another tools. So on the next step, I tried to put together the other tools on the next slide, please, that I used to see the 360 picture. So can we move to the next slide, please? Or no, before that? Yes, thanks. So the cool part about the analytics is that it allows you to reach to the people who would never talk to you, right? So you just have the numbers, and you have the numbers of the whole population of your user base, but it's with no context, right? And on the another kind of side of the spectrum, you have the user interviews where you have the story, the user story of how they actually use it, but you cannot speak to every individual because it is impossible to time consuming. And then there are stuff in the between, right? So like a surveys, like a feedback, or I've also set up the Discord channel where we would, with the most engaged users, we would discuss how the feature works, how they benefit of it, and so on. So I recommend having all this together. And what I try to highlight in here that it's just numbers is not enough. You need to have some context one way or another. Next slide, please. The next slide is, no, before that. Yes, this one very quick. It's about the, you just have the numbers and you need to be very careful when you try to interpret this data, right? So this was a couple of weeks after the product launch, and people were opening the Tableau dashboards and looking, okay, how many people do we have activated? How many people have tried to use this macro? And there's a 100K, fine. But how many people do we have which have potential access to it? How many installations do we have? We have 7 million installations. And if we compare those two numbers, it appears that only 1% out of 100 actually tried it, and it gets a feeling that you're underperforming, right? But then on the next slide, we did some a digging and analysis, and the full picture was a bit different. So first off, Tableau only showed the numbers for people who opted in for analytics. And this is not all user base, only 16% of the users say, okay, you can gather my data and use it. So that's why if you're a reverse engineer, the full number will be 6.5 times higher roughly. And this is one side. Another side is, as I mentioned, people just install this when they just bought the device, right? And they typically do a setup only once. So I was wondering, okay, how many people opened UI at least once since the installation? And turns out that only 38% did so, which brings this 7 million down to 2.7 million. And then if we compare those two numbers, so how many people were exposed to the feature to how many people actually tried it, we have almost every fourth, which of course can be improved, but it's much better than 1.4%. That's why be very cautious and very careful where you try to tell the story with the numbers, right? On the next slide, very brief and straightforward example of how we used analytics in a very easy and straightforward way. And this would be the pre-made macros. So we offered with every release, a 10 or so macros that we created within the team, and we show it for everyone else just to a plug and play type of the experience. And because people can create a Lego pieces, that's why I put this slide. So we give you Lego pieces, you can create something by your own, or you can just pick one of the toys that we created for you. But how do we know which one are good and which one are not? So we gather the stats on for each one of them, how many times they were installed and how many times they were used. And for example, we found that the one that uses ChatGPT, example that I used before, was like better by magnitude of 10 compared to everything else. So in the next release, we added 5 more AI application macros that would do summarization, translation, and so on. And we removed those that were like used only a couple of times, right? And this way we can constantly update the list, add cool ones, experiment on the unknown ones, and remove the bad ones. Okay, so the final slide, I'm not sure. I just put some like outlines in here on the next slide, but they are very common sense-ish, right? Can we move to the next slide, please? So I think that we have there something about that you have the data, you have the numbers, but you need to be careful to draw conclusions out of it. You need to use all spectrum of products. I'm sorry, could you please mute? Yeah, thanks. You need to use full spectrum of products to have the feeling that you know the products. And analytics is just one of the tools that can give you extensive numbers, but you need to have some context for it. And about this, like a flow that we have, right? So detect what can be improved, create a hypothesis, validate this hypothesis, change the product, manage again, and do it again. So that's it. Thanks. And now, yeah, I just went through it. And on the next slide, I think that we have a list of the tools that we use in our team. So just for your reference, might be useful for you. And now I think that we can move to the Q&A time. Thanks.
So we have several questions in our chat. And let's go with the first one. So let me check. Where is it?
Yeah, I can see the first one. I guess is from Mislav. So should PDM be focused on customer value of the company that hires him or user value? So I think that like if company is not focused on the user value, they won't be on the market for long. So I would every time go for the user value, right? If you're serving your users right, then they're paying the company that you work for, and everyone's happy.
Good one answer, Asya.
Yeah. I can take the next one from Helena. Do you have the business questions documented somewhere else? It looks like a very important info that should be and has to be linked to the data that you're going to collect. So I assume it was asked during the data taxonomy. So data taxonomy has a reference to the business questions, but how we got to that, it was just captured on a series of workshops, what kind of objectives and goals the organization has right now, and then broken down into further questions. But I don't have any specific template that I could recommend or share. The only thing I can point out is that when you are working with the customer journeys, it's also a good place where you can point out some of the business questions, like what's the conversion going to be or is, many people drop off, etc., etc. Yeah, so I hope it helps. And then I think another one is for me. Sofiia, if understood correctly, you had set up tags events in the tag manager for e-commerce site. As a product manager on the project, did you have previous experience with e-commerce GTM settings before the project or learned on the go? I had prior experience with Google Analytics, some with e-commerce, maybe not to the extent that we ended up doing it because it was like 28 markets and one website for different markets, 4 apps for mobile and 2 for kiosk. But that's the beauty of knowing how things work. And as long as you know the essence of it, you can work off any tool, because building the question the way it is built here, it will be a predicament for you to work with any other tool going forward. And also important to point out that Google Analytics 4 was relatively new at that point, was still changing. When we started mapping out attributes, it didn't support custom item attributes, and when we got to the implementation, it started to. So there will be always a place where you have to understand on the go and make decisions on a go.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the next one. What metrics and what tools do you suggest to start with product analytics with a retail banking app? So my first point is, frankly speaking, it doesn't matter what tool you suggest. In any case, you need to do pre-product work when you need to understand the value of the product, to build their journey, to understand what events you want to gather. So to prepare all of this stuff, it will be nevertheless which tool you are choosing. In any tool, you need to do this prior job and to understand those metrics. And after that, perhaps if we are talking only about app, Amplitude is very good. Amplitude is also very good when you need to connect different platforms. For example, if you also have web, not web applications, a website, and after that, the mobile application, and you could easily relate it and link them in Amplitude. Google also will be enough, but any analytical tool will work for you. It really depends at first at what metrics you need. And what metrics you need, at first build journey, understand your key touch points, after that to create the event to that, and answer on the question, why I'm doing this, what these events bring to me, to what conclusion, and how I could impact due to this metrics on the main value of my app. So in banking, retail banking, so perhaps it will be transactions. So you need to think how to increase the number of these transactions, how to make a higher retention to the app, and how to make the flow easier. So I think something like this. And we have one more. Do you really need domain knowledge, knowing specific metric, customer journey to work as a product? If no, what is the difference with the BA then? Nice one, a little bit tricky. So do we need really to have domain knowledge? So frankly speaking, understanding of the domain will be for sure beneficial, because you could uncover a lot of things which are hiding. So for example, even if we can take financial and banking. So in banking, there are a lot of terminology, a lot of process, a lot of legislation stuff that you need to know when you are building the product. But basically, the common sense of product manager is to have very high adaptive rate to any domain. So we are working in different domains, me, Yurii, Sofiia, and on our hands, for the one day we are working with the hardware companies, the next day we are working with the healthcare companies, and very next day we could switch to the e-commerce. So basic grounded knowledge, they will be the same. You need to have their common sense how it works. You need for sure to go deeper in the subject, so to analyze market trends, to see the competitors, to understand how the product works itself, what the target audience, what their need, and after this knowledge, you could build itself the product and could understand it. So do you need domain knowledge? I say it will be good. If you don't have it, you need to at least to grab some time and to recover it. But in any case, the basic principles will be the same from domain to domain. They will have some small or not small, sometimes peculiarities, which you also need to learn if you want to succeed. I hope it answered the question. We have the next one. As a BA switching to product manager role, I said, okay. Is it answering the question? Do you have, what is a good way to start getting involved, learning in product development? It's a good question. I assume at first you could watch some videos at first, but you can read perhaps a book, Inspired. It's a very nice one. It's covering about their product manager routine and how to work with a product. I assume it could be really cool beginning. Sofiia, Yurii, perhaps you have also some recommendations from what to start, get knowledge and interest in product management development?
I would say
depends where you start. Yeah. Because if you're like a QA or BA or designer, you're already quite close, and there are like some overlapping parts here. If you're just a new one and you want to learn about how does product development works end to end, I recommend this book called 4 Steps to Epiphany. It's a weird name, but it's essentially about the bringing the product from the idea to the market, and it gives you the picture like this end to end. It's a good one.
Yeah, I would just say work from the top to bottom, get the general context and idea on areas, stages, whatever you need to build yourself a picture, and then find whatever you're interested in and try to get expert or look into that field as much as possible.
And also for our audience, just to have more knowledge. So, and Sofiia and Yurii switch from their BA role to their product management role. So you see a huge example how people could change their career, grabbing a different kind of knowledge. And perhaps, I don't know, if we still have time, you could share your experience. What is the difference between BA job and product manager job from your perspective? What extra knowledge do you need? I don't know if you have to say something.
I don't know.
Just being proactive.
Yeah.
And not afraid of the challenge. I think, yeah, people, I think, at least for me, learn in action. So you could read 1,000 of books, and at the end, when you don't have the experience, when you don't work with the challenges, it's not going to do any better for you. Yeah, so being proactive, and product management is a leadership role. Eventually, you'll have to inspire a lot of people to do something that they might not believe into or don't understand why. You'll have to sell that stuff. You'll have to become very creative. So take as much challenge as possible.
Yeah, I would double that. Yeah.
Yeah.
About the common sense, because like a lot of this stuff is like you look at it like, come on, it's obvious, but it's only obvious in a hindsight, right? And it's obvious because of the experience. I think after you've seen like 12 more than different products and different situations and what works, what doesn't work, then it like feels obvious. So just to get more experience, try to get ownership of the stuff that is reachable to you at the moment, right? So you can ask questions, you can like go deeper, go wider, and that would be getting closer to it.
I would also add that product manager is business acumen skill. So you need to work fast, you need to understand the market. You are helping your client to earn money, and in the meantime, you are teaching your users to get the value from the product. So it's business acumen and the marketing challenges, and you are looking on the subject quite wider, broader. I assume this is the role of product manager, which is different from the BA. Okay, so it seems to be that we have no more questions. We have a discussion in the chat, so it's really cool. So thank you very much for attending us today. We really hope that some of their topics were really useful and close to you, and you are facing some of the challenges. We wish you good luck, and if you want to learn more, so join SoftServe team. We will teach you, join our cluster, and we will guide you through the different domains and different expertise which we have. So thank you very much for joining today. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Take care.